She walks along the water's edge, studying the current, the flatter rock, and the safer open space before choosing where the platform should sit. The calm pace here shows that she is not building on impulse. She is reading the landscape before placing the first pole. Fresh green bamboo is dragged into place, measured again, and cut to a workable length. Each stroke of the blade does more than trim material. It breaks the job into manageable pieces so the platform can fit together with more precision. The first bamboo poles are laid side by side across the rock, forming the early outline of a low platform. The structure is still extremely simple, yet from this moment the bare stone already begins to carry the shape of a temporary shelter. She crouches low, tightens each binding, and trims the bamboo ends until they sit neatly together. These small, repeated actions may seem quiet, but they are the very details that decide whether the floor will feel stable or shaky later on. Once the base begins to appear, she adds extra pegs and holding points so the frame will not slide across the wet stone. That caution slows the work slightly, but in return, it gives the whole structure a far clearer sense of safety. By the end of the first stage, the bamboo floor has enough shape for her to step onto and test. What started as an empty patch of Riverside rock now holds a compact base ready to carry a taller frame in the next step. With the floor secured, she bends supple bamboo into curved ribs and ties them along both sides. That image signals that the project will not stop at a low deck. She is turning it into a place where she can truly sleep. One bamboo arch follows another, raising the soft skeleton of a rounded A-frame shelter. In only a few minutes, the build shifts from a flat surface into a space with height, a roof, and the first real feeling of protection. A gray tarp is pulled across the bamboo frame and adjusted corner by corner. Once that outer skin is set in place, the Riverside shelter begins to feel more private and more capable of resisting the damp air and cool wind off the water. She returns to the firewood, the cooking spot, and the smaller details around camp. This section shows that the build is already usable because the focus is no longer on raising the frame, but on preparing to stay. The fire burns brighter, food is set near the coals, and the pace of the video softens. After so much non-stop bamboo work, the new shelter begins to do exactly what it was built for: hold a warm, dry, temporary corner between rock and water. On a rocky shelf beside the current, the young woman returns to her camp with a small fire, a few lengths of bamboo, and just enough open space to begin. The place is still rough, but she has already seen how this uneven stone can become a usable resting spot. A short meal by the river and a cooling moment in the current become the first reward of the story, but the video does not stop there. After finishing a resting place by the stream, she moves deeper into the forest for a larger task. The setting shifts completely to a dirt slope in the forest where a wide dugout cavity is being shaped little by little. She trims the front face, opens more room, and turns the exposed earth into a shelter with a clear purpose. Each scrape of soil and each adjustment to the edge makes the front wall flatter, while small recesses on both sides begin to appear like storage spaces or future fire niches. The labor here feels heavier because everything must be done directly against damp earth and a steep slope. Once the main chamber is clear enough, she brings in thin bamboo and tying material to the ground in front of the shelter. Those details show that the project is moving toward function now. It is no longer only about making the hollow larger. A woven cylindrical frame gradually takes shape outside the dugout, and wet clay is piled nearby for the next step. By now, the viewer can see that she is building a specialized feature, most likely a chimney or stove core, for the interior space. Science note: wet clay clings well to a woven bamboo frame because its tiny particles bond tightly together. As it dries, that earthen layer holds heat better than thin wood, which makes it useful for a handmade stove body or chimney. After shaping the woven core, she begins pressing handfuls of clay over the surface, compacting it and smoothing it by hand. A rough object quickly takes form, rising like an earthen chimney made from the very color of the soil around the shelter. As the final chapter begins, the chimney stands firmly, the leafy roof over the entrance reads more clearly, and the front of the shelter feels more complete. From the outside, the dugout no longer looks like an unfinished cut in the hill, but like a temporary home meant to be used. Inside the earthen chamber, she lays out a mat, places a kettle, and brings food indoors. That change from an empty hollow to a lived-in space makes the final payoff much stronger than a simple reveal of the structure alone. When she finally sits down inside the finished dugout, every earlier detail begins to connect: the leaf roof overhead the wall, niches at the sides, and the open space just large enough to rest in the forest. At this point, the build is no longer an excavation project, but a place that already carries human presence. The closing images linger on the quiet meal inside the warm brown shelter walls. After two very different chapters, a riverside camp and a dugout on a forest slope, the video ends with the feeling that all of the effort was truly used, not just built for display. If you enjoy watching simple shelters come to life in nature, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment to support her work.